Hello everyone and welcome to this Planning Committee meeting which is being held at the Civic Offices and is streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. I'm Councillor Stephen Brown, Chair of the Committee. Members of the Committee are present in the room tonight and I'll ask them to introduce themselves shortly. As you'd expect, a number of officers have also joined us. For those present tonight, please be aware we are not expecting a fire alarm this evening, and in the event an alarm sounds, please exit nearest exits and meet yourself in the car park as indicated by the marshals. We will now do introductions and I'll ask for the councillors on this side to start first, please. Councillor Exon.
Councillor Exon and Vice Chairman of the Committee.
Good evening, Councillor Keith McLean, the other Vice Chair of the Committee.
Councillor Leo Montague, just a regular old committee member.
Councillor Saskia Soden and a member of this committee.
Councillor Waqas Ahmed, member of this committee.
Councillor Sophie Bell, member of this committee.
Councillor Sue Smith, member of this committee.
Councillor Paul Trendall and a member of the committee.
And the officers from down that end, please.
Nigel Weeks, Highways.
Rob Pearson, Nexus Planning, assisting with the Lidl application.
Simon Pitt, Heritage and Design Manager.
Tamlin Barton, Senior Planning Officer.
Jo Orton, Principal Planning Officer.
Charlotte Ashby, Principal Planning Officer.
Good evening everybody, John Palmer, Head of Planning.
Good evening all, Chris Nash, Development Management Manager.
Good evening, Catherine Hall, Head of Legal Services.
Evening all, Alex Melia, Senior Governance and Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you very much, everyone. We have 4 planning applications to consider this evening, and for the benefit of all, I will now explain how we will conduct the meeting. For each application, the planning officer will introduce the application. Where there are presentations, these will be displayed on the screens in the room, as well as on the recording. We will then invite those who've registered to speak in advance of the meeting to come forward. I will ask that officers deal with any points of clarification from councillors following the presentation, and then move the recommendation in the report and invite a member of the committee to second. This does not indicate that either of us support the proposal, but it allows us to debate the matter. I will then invite the committee members to raise any points of debate, and each member will have up to 3 minutes to speak. To be clear to members of the public present and online, for all of the applications on the agenda this evening, we will only be considering material planning matters as set out in planning law, and for quick reference, these are all included at the beginning of the meeting agenda, which is available online. If any amendments are proposed, these must be moved and then seconded and then voted upon, and once all contributions have been made, I will sum up and take a vote on the motion or amended motion. I would ask all participants to keep to their contributions to the allocated time and speak only when invited to do so by the chair. If legal representation is required at any stage, I will invite the council's legal officer to comment, and voting will be conducted by a show of hands. If a recorded vote is requested, a vote will be taken by name. Before we begin, I would like to remind the audience in attendance that while this meeting, as all of our planning meetings, are held in public, those who've joined us in the public gallery have done so as observers and not as an audience. While I appreciate there may be strong feelings and views on the items before us, I would encourage those in the public gallery not to express support or opposition to the comments made by councillors, officers, speakers. There is no shouting, interruptions, heckling, booing, hissing, applauding. It's not a pantomime. Thank you very much. I will briefly reference the use of electronic devices by committee members. Councillors may be using them to reference their background papers, especially given how thick tonight's papers are, or possibly further policy documents. We'll now move on to the item agendas. Item number 2, apologies. Alex, do we have any apologies?
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on 6th of November and 18th of December 2025, and the Planning Panel held on the 15th of January to approve. Are the minutes agreed? Thank you very much. Declaration of interests. Do any councillors wish to disclose any interest? These include disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest, or non-registrable interest, including other pecuniary interests they may have in the business to be transacted, and officers will disclose any interest they may have in any contract to be considered.
Chair. With regard to item 6B, I've been advised that I may be considered to be predetermined on this issue and consequently will recuse myself from it. I will go and sit at the back and tut but very quietly, but probably frequently, and then rejoin the meeting at the end of item 6B.
Thank you very much, Councillor Trendall. I would also like to highlight, for the sake of transparency, that all of the committee members have received emails from two objectors to the item of 6A. These have been passed on to the officers where appropriate, passed on to the officers as appropriate, so they can include them in any update papers and responses. Moving on to public participation questions. Alex, have we received any questions not related to items on this evening's agenda?
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, we will dive in with item 6A, the first application, land to the north of the junction of Ridgeway and Queen Eleanor Street, and I will ask Charlotte and Chris to present.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for the construction of a new food store together with associated works, including parking, access and landscaping. And it's at the land to the north of the junction on Ridgeway. So the application site is located to the north of Ridgeway, to the west of Galley Hill Local Centre and Walnuts Care Centre. So these are application site photos. On the left-hand side, you can see looking southwest from the formal parking area and also from the existing bus stop, close to where the proposed access will be from Ridgeway. And here you can see two photographs looking southwest within the gravel car park and also to the northeast from the existing gravel car park informal overflow parking area. This is the proposed site layout. This has been amended, very minor changes to include power two-wheeler spaces as reported in the update paper, and therefore a change to condition 1 as a result. These are the proposed elevations of the Aldi store. And here is a map showing the primary catchment area for the sequential test within the 5-minute drive from the site, alongside the allocated centres, which can be seen in the yellow, and then also the 5 sites within the sequential test, which were considered in green. So the key considerations for this application is that the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the sequential test required by policy ER10, and we have identified that there are conflicts with policies DS4, CC3 and ER9 of Plan MK and policy 9 of the Stony Stratford Neighbourhood Plan, but compliance with the development plan as a whole. And in addition, material considerations and benefits have been weighed in the planning balance and are considered to outweigh those conflicts. There are also site constraints and information presented in terms of mitigating circumstances to enable compliance with policy CT10 in relation to parking provision. Just to flag for members in relation to any representations that we've had, the non-material considerations for this application relate to the ownership of the land, financial transactions relating to the land, discussions in relation to MKCC as the landowner with Audi regarding the site, and also the 2018 Wolverton site. So the recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions in the original paper and the update paper, and completion of the Section 106 agreement.
Thank you very much. We have 3 speakers registered in objection to this application. When I call you forward, please can you join us on the chamber floor? You will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will notify you when there are 30 seconds remaining. We will go in reverse alphabetical order. Simon Palmer, first, please.
Good evening. In the interest of full disclosure, I am also a Stony Stratford Town Councillor. However, as Roy is here to speak on behalf of the Council, I'm here as a resident of Galley Hill, where this site is proposed. The location, it simply isn't suitable. It's not large enough by admission in the application. The store of the size would require 144 parking spaces. The latest revised document seemed to show only 100, so nearly 30% reduction in what's required. That's on top of removing some of the parking that is currently used by the other facilities nearby, Woodland School and Walnuts Care. And we have an issue on the estate already with parking, with overflowing onto the through road as it is, If those spaces are reduced, that's a problem that's only going to get worse, and that's after the school children have lost a significant chunk of their playground, which got converted into a car park last year. And that is still a problem, and it's only going to get worse if this goes ahead. There are also other things that I noticed in the documentation. The net biodiversity gain. According to the report, actually, it's going to be a loss. 89%, I think it showed, as a loss in habitat space, and that's going to be made up for with credits, which is, well, it's not a net biodiversity gain for us. It might be somewhere else. It's just not a suitable site. It's not big enough, and I think the documentation you've got demonstrates that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Paul Bartlett, please.
Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to particularly thank the people who have come from Galley Hill, who say no to Aldi at Galley Hill. And it's interesting that what you have on that board there is the very reason why we're here. We're here because Milton Keynes Council wants the money for that site. And over there, Councillor Marland and Councillor Middleton said that a couple of years ago. There's never ever been a desire and need, any support from any retailer, Aldi, Tesco, Lidl, Marks and Spencer, anyone, to build a supermarket in a residential area, which, as you know, is the first new estate in Milton Keynes. It was never planned to have a supermarket. There's no planning policy or retail strategy in Milton Keynes that remotely suggests that there should be a supermarket at this site. So when you're discussing this evening about what you should or should not do, if you support this application, you're going against every single strategy that's ever been written in Milton Keynes since 1967. That's a long time. It's a lot of years to just discard from all of this. And of course, we do know that the whole of this process is to do with money. Milton Keynes has only kept its budget relatively stable because it keeps selling land towards Newport Pagnell, towards Olney and Emberton, selling land at Westcroft, at Whiteside, down towards the Brick Hills, and down towards Fairfields and White House. That is what has kept Milton Keynes afloat. Once you sold all that land, councillors, you're completely messed up. So your people who put this paper together, all they want to do is make money for this council. The actual report through Nexus, you're paying Nexus, and Nexus are doing what you want to do. On this side, I'm not sure about this side, on this side, Nexus are doing what you want to do. Give every possible reason why this should be supported. There's ideas in the plan that there's a bus route. There's a bus route, the number 9. Number 9 doesn't exist. It's actually the X9. And the X9 goes from Aldi in Towcester to Aldi in Bradwell Common to Aldi in central Milton Keynes. If you pass it, it'll be now Aldi in Galley Hill. We do not want this in Galley Hill. There's no need for it. There's no desire for it. Hundreds of people have opposed this application, and they're opposing it because they want to keep Stony Stratford safe. They want to protect our high street. They want to protect the shops in Galley Hill and Fuller Slade. People are very, very upset that the motivation behind this whole thing is money. For a Labour council to be so money-grabbing is actually quite extraordinary. I'll finish there, Chairman, and I just hope that the committee will understand the background, because without that background, there wouldn't be this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
and
everyone.
we'll
Thank
call
you for
on
your patience.
Councillor Adams to come forward next.
Good evening, I'm Roy Adams, I'm Chairman of Stony Stratford Town Council. At Stony Stratford Town Council, we believe the application should be refused for a number of reasons, including that it is in contradiction of existing Milton Keynes Council policies and plan guidance. Firstly, the proposed development of this out-of-centre site would have a detrimental impact on the vitality and viability of not only the Galley Hill local centre, but that of Stony Stratford as well. Local planning policies provide a clear framework for planning applications that will have an effect affect the Galley Hill local centre. Proposals which reduce or erode the scale or mix of activities or reduce the significance of the original structure at the local centre will be resisted in order to maintain its integrity. Therefore, the proposals would be contrary to the retail hierarchy set out in policy ER10 of Plan MK, as it would be harmful to the vitality and viability of the existing town, district and local centres. The application should therefore be unacceptable and would also fail to accord with strategic objectives 8 of Plan MK and policy ER10 of Plan MK and policies 8 and 10.2 of the Stony Stratford Neighbourhood Development Plan, which has been accepted by Milton Keynes Council. Secondly, the proposed retail use is in contrary to the existing education, recreation and community land uses, policy L2 of the adopted Plan MK, regarding the current lands designation. Thirdly, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed developments will not lead to a burden or have an adverse effect on the existing local social sustainable infrastructure or education leisure facilities. The proposal we've already heard about the difficulties of parking, etc., in the local area. The proposal is therefore contrary to guidance within supplementary planning documents and the social infrastructure planning documents and the sustainable construction supplementary planning document, which support policy NF1 and policy SC1 of Plan MK. And also, it's contrary to the aims of the National Planning Policy Framework. Plan MK also states that retail developments of this nature should take place in combination with new housing and on new estates, where possible, not on the oldest estate in Milton Keynes. Galley Hill is well served for low-cost supermarket facilities within a short distance in Stony Stratford and Wolverton. An additional store diluting the takings of these other facilities is unnecessary and could impact the vitality of them. The older proposal clearly identifies a store as a facility for weekly shopping, and contrary to put forward by the officers, is not something that can be undertaken on foot or bicycle by local residents. The detrimental impact of on adjacent business has not been properly assessed and will therefore not...
That's your time. Can you wrap up, please?
What's that? That's your full time. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I've made my points anyway. Thank you.
You turn off the microphone, please. Paul? Thank you. The right of reply has been offered to the applicant and their agents. They will have a total of 9 minutes to respond, and again I will notify you when there is 30 seconds remaining. So I believe Nick Hardy and Robin Williams are due to speak.
Good evening, I'm Robin Williams, Property Director for Aldi, and I'm delighted to be able to speak to you this evening and endorse the very thorough report prepared by the officers and the very clear recommendation that planning permission should be granted for our proposal for a new food store to serve this part of Milton Keynes. We're looking forward to further investing in the city, and if approved, the Galley Hill store will trade alongside our existing stores in Milton Keynes and will provide additional choice and value for residents. The new store will employ around 40 new well-paid jobs when it opens. The application was validated last May. Since then, we have worked closely with your officers to make sure that we have responded to any requests for further information and any technical or other issues raised by consultees. We have provided any further information that your officers and independent advisors, Nexus Planning, have asked for in relation to retail planning policy, and Mr Hardy will cover those points off. We've made a number of small but important changes to the site layout. We have made changes to our landscaping proposals and to the design of the store following comments from your landscape, tree, ecology and urban design officers. We've increased tree planting to replace more of those which are lost. We've designed the landscaping scheme with biodiversity in mind, and we've included integrated bat bricks in the scheme. We've beefed up the management prescriptions in our landscape management plans, and all of these changes have been made to respond positively to comments from your officers and consultees. In relation to BNG, the final site layout and landscaping scheme does result in a loss of 4.38 habitat units and a small net gain in hedgerow units. Unfortunately, we can't deliver all of the mandatory 10% BNG on site. We have, however, reserved biodiversity units in a habitat bank in Milton Keynes. So the necessary 10% net gain will be delivered at a local habitat bank, which is the preferred approach if it's not possible to deliver on the site itself. We're obviously keen to ensure that we provide enough parking spaces for our customers at all times. We want them to park on site and do not want them to park on local roads. The amount of car parking provided in the final layout is 102 spaces, which is below the local standard, but we are confident that it's enough and it's consistent with the number of spaces that we have in similar stores, including those in Milton Keynes. We've provided your officers with evidence to support this, which they've accepted. We've also agreed to prepare a car park management plan, which will allow store capacity in our car park during the week to be used, if it's needed, by staff at Woodlands. This addresses any concerns about the impact of the scheme on parking for Woodlands. We've agreed the principles of this with your officers. To sum up, by working closely with your officers on all of these things, we've agreed some positive changes to our scheme, and the result is a strong scheme, and it will result in a very good outcome for the site and local community.
Good evening. I'm Nick Hardy. I'm a town planner from Avis & Young, and I will respond to some of the points raised by the Town Council and also by MRPP for Tesco. Both comment on retail policy, the Town Council mainly about the possible effects on Stony Stratford and Galley Hill, and MRPP mainly about the application of the sequential test. The application is supported by impact and sequential assessments, which were scoped at pre-application stage, and they use data on shopping patterns from the Council's 2024 retail study prepared by Nexus. Nexus is appointed to review our assessment and to provide independent advice. Nexus are acknowledged experts in retail planning. They asked us to update our original assessment with more recent expenditure, population and turnover data. That was submitted in August 2025, and Nexus advised the Council in October that the application accords with the requirements of the sequential test. There will be no impact on planned investment in any centre, and no centre would be the subject of a significant adverse impact. MRPP objected in January. Nexus reviewed their letter and our response to it, and advised on the 12th of February that nothing in MRPP's letter changed their previous advice to the Council. Nexus asked us for a sensitivity test relating to the potential impact on the planned food store at White House, and confirmed on the 3rd of March that that did not change their conclusions on impact. In short, the assessment by Avis & Young, Nexus and officers has been rigorous and has had a sharp focus given MRPP's and Tesco's objections. Nexus agree that Aldi's assessments adopt normal standard and best practice approaches to the impact and sequential tests. Key points for me are that Tesco do not disagree with our conclusions on impact on centres. They do not suggest any different impacts. They do not express concern about their stores in Stony Stratford or Wolverton, and they do not say that impact on any centre would be significant adverse. They say only there's a risk of impact on planned investment in White House, which is covered by our assessment and sensitivity test, and Nexus advise you otherwise. The Town Council says the scheme would have a detrimental impact on Galley Hill and Stony Stratford. They also do not provide any different conclusions or assessments and committee must rely on Nexus's conclusions in relation to those centres. MRPP mentioned only one site in relation to the sequential test, which is the planned food store at White House. Our position is the sequential test is appropriately applied from centres in a catchment defined by a 5-minute drive time, which does not include White House. This is a normal approach, and Nexus and officers agree as per your report. That matter rests there. Tesco raised additional points about planning benefits and the planning balance. They say that officers overstate the benefits of the scheme to be weighed against any policy harm, and that officers claim there are benefits in relation to visual impact, landscaping, tree planting, the lack of amenity impacts, sustainable construction, and Section 106 contributions. The report doesn't actually make any of those claims, and MRPP's comments should, in my view, be disregarded on those matters. MRPP say also that economic activity associated with the food store does not attract weight, but paragraph 85 of the MPPF is clear that significant weight is to be given to supporting economic growth, which includes job creation. And paragraph 125 of the MPPF gives substantial weight to the reuse of brownfield land, and officers also give modest weight to EV charging spaces which are provided above policy standard. These are clear benefits. MRPP don't mention them, but officers rightly give them weight. In summary, all of the points raised by MRPP and the Town Council have been covered in the application documents by Nexus's advice and by officers. And in my view, the application is for sustainable development, is in accordance with the development plan read as a whole, and should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both. I understand that in accordance with Council Procedure 7.1, we have received a question from an objector. Can officers please provide us a response?
Certainly, Chair. That question was, why is Stony Stratford Town Centre being treated by the planning officers in a less favourable way than Wolverton Town Centre in the application that's in item 6A? That is a reference, obviously, to the 2018 application. The assessment of retail impact and the sequential approach being taken here is consistent with that taken under that 2018 application following local and national policy. The outcome of the assessment is going to be unique to the proposal. So the outcome of that assessment under that application is not relevant to the outcome of the assessment under this application this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do the officers wish to offer any points of clarification to any of the points raised by the speakers?
Chair, if I may, I'm just going to jump in with a reminder really of that slide that we showed of the non-material considerations. You heard comments tonight about the motivation, shall we say, for the development of this site by the council regarding sale of land, supporting budgets and so forth. That is completely not relevant to your decision this evening as a planning committee. I won't rehearse, obviously, that you are well aware of what is relevant and what is not relevant on a planning ground. And just quickly, just to kind of set it clearly, yes, this site is not allocated for retail, but that's not where the assessment stops. You have to read the plan as a whole, and there are more than one retail policies that apply here tonight. Whilst there's no direct support, there is allowance which reflects national policy to take any site and put it forward for retail proposals, and it's about then whether it's sequentially preferable and whether it has an unacceptable impact, and the report sets that out in ample detail for you this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, sorry, Chair, I could just slightly supplement that, and I know members fully appreciate this, and I'm just saying it kind of for broader clarity as well, that there is that distinction between the council as a property owner and kind of, in this instance, developer, and the council as a local planning authority, which is the capacity of this committee this evening. And the report that's in front of members, drafted by a case officer, reviewed by myself and Chris, all three of us are chartered town planners, we all have our code of professional conduct that we have to follow. That report provides our bona fide professional planning advice for the local planning authority, considerations of matters relating to the property arm, the developer arm of the council, is not relevant to that assessment and that advice that has been presented this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you both for those. Do the councillors have any questions of clarification for the officers? And can I remind you to try and cover all questions of clarification before we move into the debate? Councillor Trendall.
Hi, just a question on the trees. I noticed in the papers that we're going to take away, I think it's 35 trees and replace them on a 2-for-1 basis. When we do that replacement, are the new trees going to appear anywhere near Galley Hill, or will they have to go and visit them somewhere near Bletchley?
So the tree planting, replacement planting will be within the application site, so within the red line.
So I'm clear, all 35 trees that are taken out, the 70 that replaced them, will all be on the site that we've seen on the maps here? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, so any replacement tree planting will need to be within the application site.
Great, thank you very much. Perfect.
Anyone else got any questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. Condition 21 relates to the car parking management plan, which we've heard from the objectors is one of the things that they're very concerned about. It's a very unusual situation, basically a shared car park, some days of the week, some other days of the week for another group. I know it's a condition that you're going to have to approve, but have there been any discussions informally as to what type of car parking management regime might be implemented? Because I do worry about this.
Yes, Councillor. In simple terms, the demand for the school peaks during school hours. It's staff car parking, and it's been observed that if you go there at sort of 4 o'clock in the afternoon, their car park is half empty. If you look at the demand for the Aldi store, which is common with most supermarkets, the demand is evenings and weekends. So that when the school potentially might be at or near capacity, the Aldi car park is empty. How the plan will work in principle is because the Aldi car park is controlled by a car park registration number regime, because shoppers are limited to, I think it's 2 hours per visit or something like that, that if the school supply Aldi with a list of registration numbers for their staff, they can be fed into the system and they can then be allowed to park in the Aldi car park within the parking management system during the day. They'll still obviously be able to go there evenings and weekends for their 2-hour slot, but during the day they can stay parking there for the full day, and that's a period when the Aldi store has plenty of spare capacity in the car park.
Thank you.
Can I ask a supplementary to that? Would there be, I mean, again, it's conditioned, so we have to agree the plan, but would that mean that, for example, the staff would be able to use some of the electric charging points that were in Aldi as well?
That will need to be in retail, but principally yes. No reason why not. It won't be that that's your car parking space is under there. It'll be this list of registration numbers that we, and the numbers we've agreed between the two parties. They'll be able to use the Aldi car park.
Any other questions from the committee? No? Okay, we'll move on to the debate portion then. I propose the recommendation of debate, which is item 6A, application 2025/0247, which is that subject to the completion of a S106 agreement securing the obligations and terms set out in the report, permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in the main report and as amended in the update paper, and in the event that the S106 agreement is not completed within 28 days following the committee's resolution, the head of planning be delegated authority to extend the period for completion of the S106 agreement, or in consultation with the chair and the vice chairs, refuse permission. Do I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Exon. Who would like to open the debate portion of this evening? Councillor Bell.
I mean, we've heard a lot from residents this evening, but I note that there were, on the application on the website, there was also lots of positive comments from residents, and that we know that they tend not to register to come to speak at planning committee because you tend to find that you get residents that object to the application that comes, but you don't tend to get residents in favour of applications coming to speak. But a lot of their comments, I think, are important to remind the committee as well, and that they've raised, you know, especially in the cost of living crisis, having an affordable option for local residents on their doorstep is important to residents that have responded to the consultation as well, and also provides more jobs for the area, which again, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, is something I think is beneficial for residents, and it is clearly represented in the comments that residents have left in support of the application. Regarding the biodiversity net gain not being provided on site, the merits or demerits of planning policy allowing for a credit system for that to be provided beyond the site boundary isn't something that's within the council's remit to debate this evening. But by providing credit towards the biodiversity net gain elsewhere, it is policy compliant, so that wouldn't be grounds for refusal. And I know one member of the public referring to a supermarket on Galley Hill not being proposed in the 1960s and not being part of the original plan for Milton Keynes. Many on the committee know I love the past, my day job's in archaeology, but that doesn't mean I think we should stay in it. Where we need to move with the times and make changes, we should do so, not stick with the status quo. That's what cities do as they develop. They change to meet changing needs of the community. And to not do so runs the risk of leading to stagnation of the city that we live in. So for that purpose, I will be supporting the application this evening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Would anyone else like to contribute to this debate? Councillor Trendall.
Thank you, Chair. Really by way of information for the committee, because I heard that we were talking about the new supermarket in White House. And what they called the White House Local Centre, by which I mean I think they mean the medical centre and the small cafe around the back of it. It's not huge. Anyway, it just so happens, what luck, I was there last week at the opening of the new White House supermarket that I attended as Deputy Mayor. It's a family-run business. It's nice. They are keen. They want to serve the local community. They are also a modular building in a car park. And I think that Tesco's suggestion that we should seriously consider it in any material way whatsoever is imaginative, but not particularly helpful. So I'd suggest to my colleagues that let's not worry about the modular building in the car park in White House in the context of this supermarket. It's a distraction, no more. Trumpian, perhaps. Thanks.
Councillor Montague.
Thank you. If it's helpful for the committee, as chair of Milton Keynes Council Budget Scrutiny Committee, it's not true that the council balances its books on the back of selling land. It's worth everybody being aware of that. That's completely untrue. Onto this particular matter, I actually really agree with everything that Councillor Bell said. I think this could be enormously beneficial for residents who live in the area, typically don't have access to cars, or not all of them have access to cars, and the ability to access affordable groceries within a walkable distance is enormously beneficial to the residents that we represent, and I think that's a huge consideration on this. But most of all, I think the conclusions in the report are fair. The work that's gone into this is significant, and I sort of applaud the paper that we've had to put in front of us today, because it is comprehensive, and I think the conclusions are reasonable, and I've not heard anything to alter that over the course of the evening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Montague. Councillor Smith.
Hi. Again, I'm in agreement with Councillor Bell. I've been watching conversations on Facebook and also through the canvassing on Galley Hill, and families are very in favour of this. People, again, like you said, there's not a lot of cars sometimes, so having a supermarket that will provide your family with fruit and veg at a reasonable price in this day and age will be really useful, and I should be going with this.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. Well, I think to start with some applause for the applicant, because in paragraph 7.141 talks about the submitted energy and climate statement. It's fantastic to see that there's going to be lots of PVs on the roof and source of heat pump, and I'm really pleased to see that as a good step forward. I live near, my ward is Oney, and we've got an Aldi and next to a Sainsbury's. Both car parks are never absolutely full, but they both seem to be quite full. Not heard any complaints. One, I would like to propose an amendment by way of adding an extra condition regarding the hours of working during the construction. Having checked with office prior to the meeting, they said, well, it's not near any residential, but lorries and workers still got to get there. So I'd like to replicate what's condition 30 on the next application, which is, except in an emergency, no demolition, site clearance, construction, site works or fitting out shall take place other than between 0800 hours and 1800 hours Mondays to Fridays, and between 0800 hours and 1300 hours on Saturdays. There should be no such activities whatsoever on Sundays, a public holiday and bank holidays. Any work activities outside these hours should be approved by the LPA in advance. Fairly standard one we've had, just for completeness. Hopefully I'll get a seconder for that.
Do we have a seconder for that? Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Exxon. Would anyone like to speak on the amendment, either for or against? No? In that case, Alex, can we take a vote on the amendment, please?
Thanks, Chair. Councillors, please raise your hand if you're in favour of the amendment. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you for that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Councillor King, on that? No. Anyone else want to make any comments at this point? Okay. In that case, yes, I will add a couple of comments and do a quick summation. Councillor Bell made a lot of good points, notably that biodiversity net gain, when included off-site, is still policy compliant, and as we have discussed at the start of the meeting, we have to abide by planning rules, not necessarily what would be our first choice. So that does count as one of the benefits of the site. I think it's fair to say that there are people on this committee who've seen a lot more planning applications than me, but certainly in the time that I've been on the committee, I don't think I've ever seen a one-to-one ratio of comments in favour and those against. I think we're all aware of the fact that when you're unhappy with customer service, you're likely to go and tell people about it, but when you're happy with customer service, you probably don't tell people about it as quickly, which is why the comments in favour of something on a planning application are normally so much lower than comments against. But if we look in the report, I think it's 15 for and 16 against, which tells me that in actuality, locally, there's probably a lot more people in favour of this application than there are against. It is an unused site, bringing this into use and providing employment and, as has been mentioned on the committee, providing good value food for the community within a place where a lot of people walk. Most of Galley Hill, most of Fully Slade, even some of Fairfields and Stoney are going to be able to walk to this and do some of their shopping. This is going to be useful for them. I will just highlight, Councillor Trendall, you mentioned about the supermarket in White House. I feel like the objections from Tesco related to White House were about the idea of developing potentially a bigger supermarket on the site in future. I don't think, you're right, it's not going to have an impact on the little one. The officer's report does say that it's the sensitivity test means it won't impact the chance of development of a bigger supermarket. And if you go down the road to Wolverton, where you see a much bigger Lidl next to a much bigger Tesco's, I think that is an ample demonstration that the two will not impact on one another in any way. The harms that have been sort of suggested about the parking, I think, have been adequately dealt with when talking about the timing of when people will use the supermarket. So as the committee has each mentioned, with the presumption of sustainable development, this seems like it is a good proposal that doesn't create enough harms to warrant refusing on planning balance. So we'll take a vote, please, Alex.
Thanks, Chair. Councillors, please raise your hand if you're in favour of the recommendation.
Sorry, just to confirm it's in favour of the amended recommendation. Yeah.
That's correct, Chair. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Unanimous agreement, the motion passes. We'll move straight on to item 6B, which is Campbell Park Northside Phase 1, and I will wait for Councillor Trendall to move. I don't mind you staying in the room, but if the tutting becomes... Sorry, Councillor Trundle, I'm being told that the rules say you must leave the room, not just sit at the back. Have to be out of the room, I'm afraid. We will make sure to call you back in before the next item starts. Okay, as I say, moving on to 6B, Campbell Park Northside, I will ask Joe to introduce the report on this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I want to apologise if I'm struggling with a bit of a cough at the moment, so if I start coughing midway through, I'm sorry, I'll deal with it as quickly as I can. So some members will probably remember this application was reported last year. It's for the erection of 306 residential apartments, a canal-side cafe, a new pedestrian and cycle link through the site to connect the existing redway network, along with associated landscape drainage, access, parking infrastructure. The previous application that was presented was refused on the grounds of heritage to the impact on the registered park and garden. So just for reference, we have the site location in front of us, which is phase 1 of the overall allocation for Campbell Park, north side. And then we've got some photos of the site. We've got the existing access to the western side of the site in 2 different further down. Then we have the western gates looking towards the east, and we've got the western corner looking east and north. And again, we've got from the eastern corner looking west to north and north to east corner looking down to the south. Okay, in front of members we have a revised site layout which has come about following the changes that were made following the discussion on the previous application, with the significant changes really being the location of the parking and the landscaping that's now provided within that area to soften the soften the hard standing. And then we also have now the verified views which came forward as part of the heritage assessment. These show what was previously with members of committee from April last year to the current position which now falls below the skyline. Okay. Following the amendments, officers have significant discussions with the applicant's team to put together an elevation strategy as to how, whilst not forward formally within this application, to be conditioned moving forward to ensure we can get something that's appropriate for this site and visually more appealing and adds something to the character of the area. So we're now down to 6 stories throughout the site, and they're working with the original MK City colours with the colour palette. Okay. We've got a view of the site now, a bit of visualisation from over in Campbell Park at the reduced heights. Okay, so the key considerations for this application is just the previous application was refused due to the moderate harm caused to the Grade 2 listed park and garden, Campbell Park, by virtue of the scale and massing of the development. Following the revisions made, the proposal now results in less than substantial harm at a low level to the registered park and garden. So therefore, as per the recommendation in the officer report and the subsequent update paper, the recommendation is therefore to approve subject to conditions and the completion of Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and well done for getting through. We've got 4 registered speakers in objection for this application, so again, once I call your name forward, please can you join us on the chamber floor. You'll each have 3 minutes to speak, and I will notify you with 30 seconds remaining. We will start with Tim Skelton, please.
Good evening, everybody. Tim Skelton, Milton Keynes Forum. I wish to address 2 points regarding the Redway through the middle of the site. The first is that this is a critical link in the Redway network, linking North East Milton Keynes to Campbell Park. It therefore follows that it must be protected in perpetuity. Despite us raising this at every opportunity since we first saw the proposals 4 or 5 years ago, there is no written safeguard for the route as part of the proposal before you. There's nothing in the main paper,
and the only relevant comment is in the update paper suggesting that it can be, but not that it will be, included within the Section 106 agreement. We do not think this is good enough. The problem of relying on a Section 106 is that there's no visibility of the process for the general public. There's no consultation, and we only know about it once it's been completed. We fully believe this route should be properly protected, and that the best way to do this is via a planning condition. And I'd be grateful if one of you could propose this, please. It's not complicated, and it shouldn't be controversial. Our second point covers the actual route of the Redway. It remains my view that the site does not cater for inclusive pedestrian and cycle movements in a convenient way, or in a way that actually encourages walking and cycling as required in Council's policies. I do not consider a 1 metre footway to be a reasonable provision on a newly built development. The proposals for pedestrians and cyclists and those with mobility issues are very poor, not convenient, and will not encourage walking and cycling. Those aren't my comments, they are your highway officer's comments. What is happening then when you are being asked to consider a scheme to be built on land that this council owns and therefore one over which it has complete control and yet is judged inadequate by some of your professionals? Like Caesar's wife, the council should be above suspicion. Schemes on land that you own should be exemplars, not tawdry second best. You should be proud of them and you should be able to demonstrate such to developers. We can do it on our land, so you can do it on yours. We believe it's perfectly possible to realign the Redway to satisfy the Highways Officer's concerns, and that this step should be taken. Quite how you do it is up to you. If you are otherwise minded to approve the scheme tonight, then I'd suggest that rather than reject it again, the application is withdrawn and then resubmitted with a suitable amendment. This has been an unusually protracted scheme, and it falls to you collectively to ensure that what is eventually built is to the same standards as the rest of the city. We do not want developers coming back on, say, a Redway design, saying, you allowed it in Campbell Park, why not here? Two simple points, therefore. Firstly, please protect the Redway, and secondly, realign it. I don't think these are difficult decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Will Feely, please.
My name is Will Feely and I live in Downhead Park, the estate that is less than 50 metres away from this site. This isn't about opposing new homes, it's about getting the right homes in the right form. I implore the committee to overturn the officer's recommendation and refuse planning permission this evening. You have the grounds to do so. Massing and scale. Page 21, visuals rely on dense leafy trees and selective viewpoints that crop out nearby homes to soften the perceived impact of this site. For half of the year, the trees are bare. The committee should judge the scheme on honest, worst-case views, as Plan MK D1 to D3 and D5 require context-led design and protection of amenity. This is compounded by the 10-metre level drop across the site and further increasing to the northern estates. The 6-storey blocks will read taller and more dominant in the middle, contrary to Plan MK-D3's requirement to reflect the scale of immediate surroundings. 5 concrete blocks beside an award-winning park do not become a landmark just because the renders and developers say so. So the test is simple. Would you accept this height and massing without relying on seasonal trees? And how can the committee fairly assess the impact if the relevant views showing the adjacent 2-storey homes haven't been provided? Heat and noise. For the worst affected units in blocks D and E, the road noise assessment indicates interior noise levels would exceed the BS 8233 and WHO guidelines unless windows are kept closed, with noise levels increasing with floor height. In plain terms, that means nearly half of residents in these tower blocks would be living in a sealed concrete box, dependent on mechanical ventilation for fresh air and comfort. If they open their windows or try to use their balconies, they are exposed to unacceptable noise levels day and night. That conflicts with Plan MK Policy D1 and D5 on quality and amenity, is the opposite of the applicants living in the park, principle and leaves this committee to decide whether it is acceptable to approve homes where the practical solution is to keep your windows permanently shut for residents not to use their balconies. The applicant is proposing 0 on-site affordable homes, and because of a massive viability deficit, even the requested 14.2 million payment in lieu is not guaranteed. On a project designed with a razor-thin 1.15 profit margin, this isn't a robust plan. It is a strategic gamble. It risks leaving Milton Keynes with a neglected, unfinished building site in our premier parkland, if costs fluctuate, which they most likely will. Harm to the park. The Planning Committee should decline this application. It is an overdevelopment on a sensitive site, and the limited public benefit of new housing is clearly outweighed by harm to heritage, environmental safety and the amenity of existing and future residents. So the harm is not outweighed by public benefits, contrary to NPPF paragraph 215 and Milton Keynes Local Plan Policy HE1. You have the grounds to refuse this, so please do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Can we have Fraser Chamberlain next, please?
Chair, council members, my name is Fraser Chamberlain. I'm a resident of Downhead Park and I speak in opposition to this application. Height is reduced, but the scheme still fails on quality, park setting and resident amenity. I would like to draw attention to the significant location of the proposal. Campbell Park is iconic and a designated heritage asset. It is the central space in our city. Any development adjacent to this resource should not only be plan compliant, but important, beautiful and in keeping, as required by Heritage Plan MKHE1 and the NPPF Heritage Balance. This development achieves on none of these, but it does offer a net loss of biodiversity. The Strategic Housing Market Assessment for Milton Keynes recommends that new housing development in Milton Keynes should be predominantly houses rather than rental-only flats. This proposal appears to fly in conflict with this recommendation, as it prioritises flats over family housing. Furthermore, the site directly adjoins Wilham Park and Downhead Park, both of which are almost exclusively characterised by houses. I note that MKCC Landscape Architecture deem this development to have unusable private balconies, with Juliet balconies that are not acceptable, referencing Amenity Plan MKHN4 D5. MKCC Conservation and Archaeology described the continued submission of a plan for a somewhat basic set of blocks. Those present at the previous hearing will recall the plans described by a councillor as looking like a gulag. It would appear that Urban Splash specialise in such design and have persisted with it. Please note Scale and Massing Plan MKD3. I wish to draw attention to those who live near Campbell Park to the parking issues facing those environs. The Campbell Wharf development, only quarter of a mile distant from Campbell Park North, has consistently led to street parking. A bay marked loading only is in daily use, not at all for loading, but for long-term parking. In response, the local authority have placed a clearway order and have displayed the appropriate signage in far greater number than is required. That said, the street parking within this specifically close to Campbell Wharf grows daily. The proposal here is for a density of dwellings with less percentage. 214 is minimum compliance. This development would offer only 208. And this, allied to the fact that the pedestrian routes in the parking area are too narrow to meet requirement, would increase the risk of conflict between pedestrians and vehicles. We, the residents, believe that this proposal harms the park setting and that the public benefits don't clearly outweigh that harm, so please refuse this application. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have Councillor Murphy up next, please?
Chair, we objected to this scheme on material planning grounds. None of these have been adequately addressed, and therefore we wish to maintain our objection. Council policies require that all new development should encourage active travel by providing safe, direct routes connected to the existing cycling and walking network. This scheme fails to do so. The proposed cycle route is circuitous and does not comply with the emerging Redway Design Guide or National Guidelines LTN 120. As a minimum, the route should be 3 metres wide with adequate forward vision and should be adopted to ensure public use at all times and in perpetuity. MK Highways note that provision for cycling and walking is poor and will not encourage active travel. A more direct route from the Portway underpass to the existing east-west Campbell Park Redway should be provided. The route does not connect directly with the Redway under Portway, forcing users to use the existing gravel leisure track before entering the development. At the southern end, the cycle route joins the existing Redway from CMK, but users who want to enter Campbell Park or proceed south to join Green Lane to Woolstone will be forced to negotiate the Green Lane roundabout. The Parks Trust has confirmed that the applicant has failed to take the offer up to make the connection across their land. To meet current parking policies, the scheme should have 15 disabled parking bays. It has 8. There should be 4 motorcycle spaces. There are none. It should have 20 electrical vehicle charging spaces, and there are only 11. The scheme not only fails to encourage active travel, it also fails to encourage residents to use electric vehicles. Balconies should be provided to every flat to provide private external amenity space. Juliet balconies are simply windows. Shared external amenity space is no substitute for private balconies. The scheme does not meet Plan MK Policy D5 and the Residential Design Guide SPD Section 4. The officer's report clearly states that there is a shortfall in amenity space against policy. We concur with the comments from the landscape architect that the loss of mature hedgerows and trees is not mitigated by the new planting proposed, particularly with regard to the inadequate buffer zones around each block, which fail to provide good security and privacy. Once again, we have a scheme in CMK providing no affordable homes, either on-site or off-site. All recently approved residential planning consents in CMK are for build-to-rent, an unviable housing product, which is not providing opportunities for people seeking to buy or rent in CMK an affordable home. We're not building sustainable communities if this continues. Members should refuse or defer this application until these matters are adequately addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The right of reply has been offered to the applicant and their agents, who will have 12 minutes to speak, and I will once again notify you when there are 30 seconds left. So I believe we have representatives of Urban Splash, Howells and MIT. Thank you. Pass, could one of you turn off that microphone?
Good evening, my name is Andrew Johnston, I'm a town planner and a director at Made It Together. This application represents a major opportunity to transform what is currently a vacant and underused site in central Milton Keynes into a thriving new neighbourhood. The site forms part of Campbell Park Northside housing allocation, and this proposal will deliver 306 homes, close to jobs, services, public transport, and some of the city's best green spaces. This is exactly the sort of place where the local plan expects new homes to be built. Members have heard how the scheme has evolved significantly through the planning process. Earlier proposals included buildings of up to 18 stories. The scheme before you today is very different. Building heights have been reduced to 6 stories, and the number of apartments has been reduced to 306. These changes respond to earlier concerns and ensure the development sits more comfortably alongside Campbell Park and the surrounding neighbourhood. Importantly, the Council's Conservation Officer now confirms that the impact on the setting of Campbell Park is considered to be low and less than substantial. In planning terms, that limited harm is clearly outweighed by the benefits of the proposed scheme. Those benefits are significant. Alongside the homes and major investment, half of the site is given over to open space, which will create a high-quality environment for residents and the wider community. The landscape will be managed in the long term by the applicant and secured through condition number 17. The scheme will improve how people move through the city, and it embraces the Redways. A new pedestrian cycle route will run through the site, and it will link directly to the Redway. This route will be fully accessible by the public. This is a highly accessible location that is well served by public transport. It includes 208 car park spaces, all capable of electric vehicle charging, 15 accessible spaces provided to serve wheelchair accessible homes, and there will also be over 500 cycle spaces for residents and visitors. Ecology has been carefully considered. A full ecological impact assessment was undertaken by Tyler Grange ecologists and submitted with the application. The proposals include green roofs, new planting and wildlife features. Biodiversity improvements will be delivered on and off-site to achieve a 15% net gain. And this will be secured through Section 106 agreements and will be a legal obligation on the applicant. Technical matters have also been thoroughly assessed. The air quality assessment concludes that the development would not result in significant impacts, a position supported by your Environmental Health Officer. And similarly, the noise impact assessment has been reviewed in consultation with Environmental Health, who are satisfied that the proposed mitigation measures are appropriate and acceptable. So in summary, what you have before you is a scheme that delivers new homes on a site allocated for exactly that purpose in a highly accessible and sustainable part of the city. The proposals have significantly improved through the planning process with reduced building heights, stronger landscape framework, and a careful response to earlier concerns. Your officers conclude the proposals represent sustainable development, that the benefits clearly outweigh the limited harm identified, and that the application is recommended for approval. I'll now hand over to Shauna, who will speak in more detail about the design of the scheme.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shauna Bradley and I'm a partner at Howells, and we're the architect for the application and the master planner for the wider Campbell Park North master plan. Howells is an award-winning practice, and we have a long-standing relationship spanning 2 decades with our client Urban Splash. Together we are renowned for creating buildings and places that transform cities and enrich lives. This design has been developed over the past 5 years through ongoing consultation with the local community, key stakeholders and planning officers. Phase 1 is the first piece of the wider vision for Campbell Park North, and it's got varied multi-generational housing typologies, generous shared gardens, a local centre with independent shops, enhanced Redway connections and new community facilities. Together we believe this will be Milton Keynes' greenest new neighbourhood, delivering much needed homes alongside high quality accessible green space. So we have tested many iterations and densities for Phase 1, and we're now at a composition of 5 low-scale buildings arranged within a landscape-led setting. The height and massing responds sensitively to Campbell Park, to Grand Union Canal and to the neighbouring homes at Downhead Park. The site has a 10-metre level change, and that has shaped every aspect of the design in order to minimise any unnecessary dig, to preserve the maximum amount of mature trees and shrubs, and most importantly, to provide accessible routes for all. We had to work carefully with the existing levels and the steep terrain. As a result, courtyard buildings used elsewhere in the master plan were not appropriate here, and the paths and the route, the public path connecting Redway to Redway, has to trace the natural contours of the land and gently negotiate the slopes. They're not and cannot be straight lines. This approach creates a permeable and welcoming edge to the listed park and invites the public to move through the site and experience it as a seamless extension to Campbell Park. At the northern edge of the site, where the terrain is gentler, sits a new landscaped play space, something currently absent from Campbell Park. The architecture reflects Milton Keynes' original ambition for innovative housing typologies. The 5 buildings are consistent in height of 6 stories and respond individually to the topography, stepping down the hillside to sit naturally within the landscape and to give glimpses between the buildings. Proposed as warm earth-toned brick tones, they complement the green setting, and facades are articulated with a very subtle rhythm of large flush and openable recessed windows. The local gallery's art programme, City Club, has been influential within the landscape and will inform the street furniture, signage and play equipment. The bold colour palette from the programme has been utilised to announce each of the building's entrances and the projecting balconies along the canal. Internally, the flush windows have a seat-height upstand, and it allows them to function not only as windows but as seats, so everyone internally can enjoy the outward views. And finally, a cafe overlooking the canal creates an inviting destination for residents and visitors, and this activates the edge of the park throughout the day and in the evening, providing much needed facilities for Campbell Park. Active residential frontages and amenity spaces all over the ground floor further increase the natural surveillance and help to foster a safe, vibrant and welcoming environment at this edge of Campbell Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Shona. My name's Nathan Cornish. I am a director and part owner of Urban Splash. We're a regeneration business, development business. We've been going 32 years. We've seen 3 or 4 recessions, and we are a long-term investor, and we're not here for a quick buck and in and out of this area. I've been involved in this proposal since the start. There's been some very honest, difficult and challenging conversations during the process, and the reason that we were attracted to this city was its pioneering spirit, and that's why we remain keen to develop here if we get the consent this evening. We first submitted plans back in 2023. There's been a lot of interest from the local community, quite rightly, and many of the local stakeholders, and as you know, the scheme got refused in April of last year. We could have appealed that decision. In fact, during the meeting, your own legal advisor advised you that you probably would be successful at appeal, but that's not our style. We went away, we licked our wounds, and we have significantly revised our proposals. That cannot be denied. We've listened, we've consulted again with the local community, and our designs have gone during the process down from 18 stories now to 6. The consultation has been genuine. It's been done by myself and colleagues. We've not appointed fancy PR consultants. We've done it face to face, and we've looked the residents in the eyes, and some of the residents we've won over, but understandably, we haven't been able to please everybody, and I understand that. Objections are down significantly. The last application last year, there were 84 objections, and we're now down to 28. This is a significant reduction, and some of the local community we have managed to win over with our proposals. We know that some people would prefer that the development didn't happen, and I understand that, but the site is allocated both in the Milton Keynes local plan under policy HS5 and the CMK Alliance plan SS4. We know that there will always be some objections to the site. Addressing some of the concerns, the Redway, we are embracing the Redways. I'm a cyclist. I absolutely embracing the Redway. So we are creating an additional connection to the Redways. We're not going against and changing any of the existing ones. In terms of density, and I think this is an important point, the local development plan both reference 100 to 200 dwellings per hectare for this site. We are at 130 dwellings per hectare, and therefore this scheme goes under the median point in terms of dwellings per hectare at 130. We should be at 150 to hit policy. We're actually at 130. We are building less density than is actually allocated in the plan, so it isn't overdevelopment in my opinion. Design is always subjective. We're working with award-winning architects. Howes and Urban Splash have had a 25-year history, and we've delivered a number of award-winning buildings across the country in Birmingham, Manchester and other cities. I genuinely believe this will be a further award-winning scheme. And finally, it's a very difficult debate, and we have made agreed contributions of £1.4 million towards a Section 106. I understand there are calls from health and education, but our strong preference is that the 1.4 million is used for affordable housing, but that's the council's decision to make. In conclusion, we are delivering much needed homes. This is phase 1 of 5 phases. There are a number of other sites coming forward with our outline application. and that will deliver housing as well as apartments going forward. So this is very much phase 1 of 5 phases throughout the development. And finally, it's 25 years since we first worked with Shona and Howes. We've won lots of awards, 495 as a business and counting, for design and architecture and quality. I'm absolutely confident that this scheme will add to those awards and be worthy of its place in this great city. Thank you.
Thank you very much all. Do the officers wish to offer any points of clarification to that raised by any of the speakers? No? Chris, you got anything?
Yeah, sorry, there is one point. MK Forum, Tim Skelton raised the concern that we have the word "it can be" included in the 106. Perhaps it should have been more explicit. That's our intention, to put it in the 106 agreement so that it does actually require the route to be made available to public. Condition wouldn't be suitable for that because it relates to someone's land and what they do with it in the long term. You can't force people to give up land, essentially. So through a condition, the only way to do it is through an obligation. So just to make clear that the obligations that we're proposing would seek to secure that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do the councillors have any questions of questions of clarification? Right, so Saskia, Leo and then Rex.
The redway has been mentioned a lot, so would it be possible to go back to the plans in terms of seeing where this will be and where the impact will be, just my own understanding?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Excuse me, the redway is located as we're looking at it, to the right of the existing access point of the site, and then it runs through following it's the darker red colour through the plan and goes out to the top and joins at the north end of the site.
Is that clear? Do you have a follow-up? Leo?
My question is on the same thing, so if it's not clear, I'll try and help. So my understanding, the darker lines on the outside are the existing redways, and I've been trying to cross-reference on Google Maps now, are existing redways not lost through the application at all. And then, yes, I can see the squiggly redway that goes through the middle. That is not an existing redway, and right now there is no path that cuts through there's what I imagine is a desire path that goes through the middle where people have trodden a path through, but there is no redway that cuts across. So we're gaining redway rather than losing redway as a result of this, albeit, yes, it's a bit squiggly and might be a bit narrower than we would like it to be. It's a net redway gain. That might be a new phrase for Milton Keynes.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Apologies, I might have missed it through coffee. Excuse me. Yes, that understanding is correct. We're not losing anything, and that will be a new path that cuts through the site.
Well, a number of things, but I'll start with the redway. Lots of references have been made, and the fact that the redway now will meet redway standards is welcome, as is commented by in the updated papers, MK Forum and some of the speakers. I, of course, am a flawless gem and would always follow the redway and never take a shortcut. However, if you've come across the rest of the population of Milton Keynes, they're not as dedicated as I am. So if I'm going to come from the north and I want to go towards the city centre, I'm not going to follow the route of the redway. I'm going to cut across an assortment of smaller footpaths and things, and that route will, by default, automatically take me onto the grid road, albeit it's a lower level grid road, and want to cross the grid road. Therefore, that's not acceptable. If you allocated a pedestrian route that went and linked, because the redway, existing redway and the proposed site and the main roads are grade separated, there should be a route that takes you from this site and pedestrianises it down to the redway so that you can now go underneath the grid road and avoid the traffic. That's not provided here, and I will ask the officer's advice the question, in what way can we condition that be a condition put into this application? Because as it stands, without that, that's not an acceptable application.
Chair, I've just taken control, hopefully, from my colleague. Yes, I have. I don't know how well you can see me. I'm the one that's moving on the screen there. It actually puts my face on it, which is quite scary. So the proposed redway is this route here, just for clarification. It comes down to the existing one at the bottom. As mentioned by the applicant in their right of reply, this site does have levels changes, and I think what Councillor Exxon is referring to is potential for people to take a route here, perhaps follow the footway this way and take a route out of the Bell Mouth onto the existing overgate, or alternatives of that nature. There is a considerable levels change around this part of the site because there is a grade separation. Overgate passes over the existing redway where I am at the moment, and there is no footway proposed to bring people out onto Overgate for obvious reasons. We don't actually want people walking along the grid road, so it's right that the proposed footway terminates at the entrance to the car park where I am right now. There is a footway that then brings you back through the site down to the redway to connect you that way out to the site to then pass under. Obviously, if people choose to take a desire line, there is a limit to how much we can do as a planning authority. Despite best efforts over many, many decades, humans will be humans. They will always find a desire line that you haven't spotted. But the simple nature of the kind of unattractiveness of walking along a dual-carriaged road, and also then having to traverse quite a steep embankment at the last moment, is highly likely to put people off taking that as an alternative, and they will choose to find the more favourable route back through the site to the new redway and connecting to the existing. Hopefully not taking too many words out of Nigel's mouth there either.
You put it much better than I could have.
Any follow-up? You happy with that?
No real follow-up, but I'm not happy with it.
Do you have any other questions you'd like to raise?
One of the objectors made reference to the parking spaces being too narrow. I'm quite sure precisely what he meant. Can officers confirm to us that all of these parking spaces meet current standards?
Through you, Chair, yes, the the parking spaces have been checked by officers and highways, and they are acceptable size spaces.
Okay. In the right of reply, it said that all of the parking spaces are suitable for electrical vehicle charging. However, only 20 of the spaces are going to be physically set up to do so. Is it within our power to condition that, even if that we can put the infrastructure in to ensure that all of the car parking spaces at a future date would be electrical charging acceptable, even if they don't actually do it's the infrastructure rather than actually doing the car parks passive?
I mean, Joe and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there actually is a condition addressing the electric vehicle charging and the fact that it has to be agreed, provision thereof.
Through you, Chair, yes, Nigel's correct. It's condition 11 about EV charging points being provided. Excuse me.
Just a point of clarification as well, Chair, if I may. In terms of the quantum, we still have to remember we have adopted standards So reasonably, that's all we can expect to achieve from the proposal. If we were to condition to say Thal must provide every single space as an EV chargeable space, we then have to consider whether we could defend that condition at appeal, given that they do have a right of against any conditions we attach, and we would fall back to what's our adopted guidance. That's all, Chair.
I assume equally that's enough, but you're not happy with it. Any other questions from other members of the committee? Keith.
Can I have the last slide that was presented, or the one that we just looked at, brought up again, please? It might be useful to have little Chris available to move the cursor around, please. No, I can't see your face.
I'm not there yet. Apparently I have control, but it's not showing my face anymore.
Okay.
Oh, no, there I am.
So you're not very. If you move your cursor slightly upwards to the block there. Now that block, and I don't know which one this is because there's no nomenclature on the diagram. There's no parking spaces anywhere near it compared to the other 4 blocks. So I would be quite worried that and wonder why the layout hasn't spread the parking so that it's close, relatively close to all of the blocks rather than the other 4. So can you explain how that was achieved?
Excuse me, through you, Chair. That was the further parking has been spread out following the previous refusal through reducing the site and to try and ensure the landscaping. As with the previous application, they're maintaining the parking hub in the area excuse me, by the plot, the main plot as you come in there where Chris is currently hovering. But following revisions and requests from previous applications, some further parking was dispersed throughout the site, but to keep the landscape as it was and to try and keep that balance of more landscape over hard standing, the decision was made to keep it away from there and to use the main parking hub as was previous.
So the follow-up then is that, and thank you for the answer, I appreciate you're in an earlier state than I was 3 weeks ago. We've got no way of encouraging the people in that top right-hand block to not park on the roadways around, because as human nature we talked about will happen, people are not going to be happy to walk from, say, the furthest point, which could be somewhere near Over Street, to the entrance of that block. I worry, and one of the objectors made the comments about the parking down at Campbell Wharf, how that's going to be managed once the development's undertaken.
Through you, Chair, the management of the parking, as with other areas like landscaping and things that were carried out throughout the site, will be overseen by the management company.
I think the point you made, I don't think we're going to get any very further on that this evening, Chair.
Any other questions from the committee? I have a couple of questions about quantity of housing. So the CMK Alliance plan, I'm right in saying, allocated that blocklet for 500 dwellings. What is it allocated to in Plan MK?
Through you, Chair, the total allocation is for 1,500 dwellings. That's across phases 1 through to 5, which is yet to be seen at Committee 2 to 5.
Okay, so across both the city plan and the local neighbourhood plan, that little blocklet has been allocated for several hundred dwellings to be able to be fit in.
That's correct, Chair, which is part of the reason why we have got to have flats to be able to get those densities on site.
Any other questions from the committee? No? Okay, in that case, I'll propose the recommendation for debate, item 6B, application 2025/2013, which is that subject to the completion of an S106 agreement securing the obligations and terms set out in this report, permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in the main report and as amended by the update paper. In the event that the S106 agreement is not completed within 28 days following the committee's resolution, the head of planning be delegated authority to extend the period for completion of the S106 agreement or in consultation with the chair and the vice chairs refuse permission. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Wakas. Who would like to speak first on the debate? Leo.
Happy to go. Appreciate the clarifications around the redways, and I'm interested to hear Rex's question/point around the route people will really take. I do think actually the problem that you've described exists already in that space, as in you can't really cut across to that side of the grid road and go across the grid road. You'd have to make your way down to the path. So it becomes less of a consideration. Also interested about the parking point. Looking at the application, I think actually it's preferable to have the parking closer to the grid road rather than towards the canal, so that you can preserve some of the scenery and things in that area. So I'm kind of all right on those points. I think this is one of those applications where we all know this is going to be housing at some point. It's just a question of getting an application in front of us that is acceptable. I do think this is better than the previous applications that we've seen. But like residents of Downhead Park and Milton Keynes residents, I'm concerned about Campbell Park and the surrounding land, and it is a central feature of Milton Keynes, which we all want to protect. Having looked through all the papers, listened to all of the comments made, I am struggling to imagine we will get a better application than this. That is refusable, if that makes sense. So I'm struggling to find a reason to say no to it at this moment in time, but I am very interested to hear what other councillors have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Montague. Who would like to go next? Councillor Bell?
I mean, I'm going to keep this briefer than I did on the last time we had an application for this site, which I'm sure people will be grateful about. I think it's kind of refreshing almost for the committee to refuse an application and for it to come back actually sort of taking into account some of the committee's original concerns. That doesn't happen very often, so it's nice to see that that's actually happened with this one. I think from the sort of facade plan, sort of the elevation strategy, I was having a look at that earlier in the week, and I think it's interesting sort of things that are proposed for the site, and that the variation of different brickwork colours between the different buildings and drawing on the Milton Keynes colours, and that this won't look quite so much like a sort of 5 completely identical buildings on the same site with no sort of differences between them, which I think is something that I'm quite keen to obviously avoid happening when we have developments of this scale of multiple buildings, because I think obviously you'd expect a bit of a variation if something was developed over time, and I think this provides a little bit more of that element in it in previous application as well, so that's good to see. I think in terms of the sort of impact on the registered park and garden, obviously last time I talked about that quite a bit more, and I think although there is still some harm to it, I think the level of harm has been reduced a lot on the basis that we've gone down from 12 stories to 6, that it's when sort of looking at the planning balance and the benefit of adding the redways in and providing some housing, the fact that this site has been allocated for housing for quite some time as well, I think the balance now sort of weighs slightly more in favour of approving the application compared to last time. So on that basis, I will probably be looking to support the application in this instance. I think it's very difficult to do any sort of development in the vicinity of a heritage asset that doesn't result in at least some level of harm. And I think the attempts to sort of address the committee's concerns last time and reduce the scale of the buildings to reduce the harm to the level that has been achieved through this makes it harder to kind of say no on harm to heritage asset grounds than last time. So on that basis, I think it is broadly planning the planning benefits outweigh the harm, and on that basis, the only sort of planning sound decision to make would be approve it in this instance.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Who would like to go next? Councillor Exon.
Without wanting to be completely grumpy, I have to say that the presentation and the papers that have been provided for us this time around are better than they were for the previous one. Yet again, this comes to us as a full application, as opposed to in principle application. This means it's all or nothing, and we are very restricted into the amount of effect we can make in terms of conditions. Now, far be it for me to speculate, but had the previous application come in not as a full application, maybe the result would have been different, but that's purely speculation. It's certainly an improvement to see, and it's good to see that the applicants recognise that a redway is a thing, and they've taken that on board. It's a bit of an odd route. Now, our objectors, they certainly, and reference has been made to beefing up. If we can't condition that redways are open at all times, we can do something in a section 106. But it was Chris Nash who said that we should be more specific and beef it up a bit. Now, I rely upon the officers to provide us with a method of achieving that, because I can't think of the right words to use. I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Anyone else would like to speak on this? So Saskia first, and then we'll come to Keith.
Yeah, for awareness, I wasn't on this committee last year when the application was last considered, but in the pack, and I was aware of the decision at the time, kind of going through the comparisons of what we saw last year versus today. I do think it's worth acknowledging that a lot of the changes that have been made do substantially, I think, improve this planning application in terms of, as Councillor Bell mentioned, the level of harm regarding heritage. I think that's an important point to consider. Obviously, a lot of the objections were focused on the redways, as many of the clarification points from this committee came on that subject. I do feel reassured now that I've kind of fully got to grips with the plan on that area. And I understand the concern about, how much can be enforced in terms of the S106 agreement, but I think based on the planning application we see today, from purely considering material concerns, I think the benefits outweigh the harms. So I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. And Keith?
Thank you very much. Thank you to both the objectors and the applicant for their presentations to us. Picking up on something that Rex was asking the question about, in terms of crossing over street at grade when really you shouldn't do it. I share some of his concern. We have got instances across the city, luckily not many, where we've had to erect fencing in the middle of grid roads to stop people going, but there's been severe accidents. I was going to recommend that we did that with condition 25, but then as the main entrance to the egress and entrance to the site is actually off Over Street, you're going to end up with a gap even if we had a 2.5 metre fence that people couldn't monkey over unless they were very clever. I looked at the section 106 section and worked out it's 1.4 million is probably about 10% of what it should be. And that seems worrying. I accept that viability and therefore liability has changed over the years, but we don't seem to be getting nearly as much as we should be from development this size. As I've asked the question about parking, and I think Leo made the comment that, or somebody, it's better to have it closer to Over Street. I can accept that, but I do see problems for the people in that block on the top right of the diagram are going to get frustrated at times. But it's whatever the Latin for a renter is against caveat emptor. They will know when they take out their rental agreement where they're going to be, and they have to assess that. And maybe the benefits of living closer to the canal against having to walk further to their car will outweigh that. So, yeah, I think it's been well through. I've been on the committee a long time, nearly as long as my learned fellow to the left, and we've watched the iterations come through of the whole area, and I think this is probably going to be as good as we're going to get.
Thank you very much. Anyone else with a contribution? Wakascon.
Thank you. I think overall this is a unique project, and being in a unique city like Milton Keynes, I think this is something from last time when it came to planning, I think it have reduced its size, but overall it's a good project which gives the uniqueness to our city in a different way, because I can see it won't be favored by everyone, but it's unique within the unique city. So I think overall the benefits are there, which makes this project far better than the last time it came to our planning committee. So overall I am tended towards agreeing overall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no last contributions, then I'll move on to summing up. So part of the conversations was around the redway. Obviously this adds a redway, which we like. We like redways in Milton Keynes. The redway doesn't follow what might be a desire route, and potentially there'll be an opportunity for an additional footpath to connect the redway to the entrance of the car park in the future. If we find that there are too many people going across that, that's something which we can respond to as a highways department if necessary. As Councillor Bell mentioned, it is very refreshing that someone can lose at the committee and not go straight to appeal, but come back to us with a revised application which is closer to what we are seeking and better reflects on both Plan MK and the neighbourhood plan. Obviously the CMK Alliance plan was approved by referendum and approved to have several hundred dwellings here, so the idea that it's going to be family homes is a non-starter in terms of what the local plan says. So is this the best, if we want to keep the heights low enough as per the last refusal, then there has to be car parking out from the blocks, and this is perhaps the best design to fit in that quantum of housing with close to as many car parking spaces as is needed for that. Yeah, Plan MK, Alliance Plan, both support this. In terms of what it's been designed as, there aren't, as has been said by various members of the committee, good, solid planning reasons for us to refuse this that would be defendable at an appeal. Alex, can we go to a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, please raise your hand if you're in favour of the recommendation. And those against? I don't believe there are any abstentions. We'll just check. So that's 7 in favour, 1 against, no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alex. 7-1, the motion passes. Sue, could I ask you to nip out and send Paul back in as well, please? Okay, thank you very much everyone. Apologise for the quick pause. We'll move on now to item 5C, which is Bank House, and I will ask the officer to introduce if your voice is still up to it, Joe.
Oh gosh. Thank you, Chair. This application is for Bank House, and it's for a variation of Condition 2, Condition 5 and Condition 6, seeking to reduce the number of two-wheeler parking spaces from 18 to 10, the number of blue badge spaces from 11 to 4, and an increase in the overall number of car parking spaces from 27 to 34. And the application is varying a previous variation which relates to the original application, which was allowed at appeal, that many of the members may have seen the original application when it was refused by members. So just to refresh your memory, this is the application slide. Which is situated in central Milton Keynes. Wonderful, thank you. Apologies. To the east of the previous Santander and to the west of the olive tree. So these are the oh my God. I think we're okay now. These are the proposed basement and ground floor plans with the amended parking provision. As you can see, there are still those 4 blue badge spaces retained, and all spaces are providing EV charging points. So this is just a summary of changes between the original scheme that came to committee, the scheme that was allowed at appeal, and the previously amended scheme, and now the proposed scheme. And this is in the committee report that you had in front of you, but just to remind you. And the key considerations here are the alterations which do reduce the number of disabled and powered two-wheeler parking spaces, but the parking provision remains compliant with the parking standards, and therefore policy CC10 of Plan K and T4 of the Central Milton Keynes Finance Plan. And the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no speakers registered in objection to this application, so do councillors have any questions of clarification on this application? No. Okay. I will move on to proposed recommendation for debate, which is item 6C. Permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in the main report, and in the event that the S106 letter to carry forward existing planning obligations is not completed within 28 days following the committee's resolution, the head of planning be delegated authority to extend the period of the signing of the letter, or in consultation with the chair and the vice chair has refused permission. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Keith. Does anyone want to speak on this? Go on the right.
It should have been a question. We've seen the variety of changes to do with parking standards and things. They are what they are. They are what they are. Would I be correct in saying that also part of this variation is a change in the contributions on a 106 agreement outlined on pages 160 to 161?
Different application. Different application. Oh,
that is the next item that we are talking about.
Okay. All right. I'll shut up about that then.
He's a Boy Scout.
Are there any contributions to the debate on this? No. I think I will make a very brief contribution then. Bankhouse was not the polished gem application when it first came to the committee, which is why the committee refused it. However, it was overturned at appeal, and I think if we were to try and oppose this, then there would be a very similar outcome. Alex, can we have a vote, please?
Thanks, Chair. Councillors, please raise your hand if you're in favour of the recommendation. That's unanimous, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Motion carries. We will move on to item 6D, which is the land at the Agora, and I will ask Tamlin to introduce this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. For those of you that don't remember, in 2021, the Agora development was approved planning permission. It was for 115 homes and some commercial development as well. Subsequent to that decision, there was another application to vary the design of the Agora. That application was approved later, and as part of that, the council bought the land and are now the owners of the site. This application proposes to vary the obligations that were carried forward in that second permission. So that was through a memorandum of understanding, which is being, the obligations in that are being modified as part of this application. So I've just put up a picture of the Agora scheme in Wolverton. For those of you that don't know, the Agora's been demolished. The car park still exists. In this application, we are considering the obligations originally, the original obligations. As part of that, I've also explained the affordable housing in equivalent in money terms there at the top of the table, but originally it was proposed as 31 units. As part of this proposal, it's we have to revisit the contributions which were questioned, and the test in that is to do the contributions still serve a useful purpose, and this is through case law. This is where this test comes from. The conclusions are that the education and neighbourhood play contributions are not justified in their full amount, but they still serve a useful purpose. However, emergency services, voluntary sector, museums and archives, waste management and all the car parking related obligations do not. And then subsequent to that, on viability grounds, because there was a viability assessment submitted as part of this application, which has been independently assessed through Chris White, who's on the call now if there are any questions. As part of that, it's concluded that the application, the development is not viable, and therefore, in terms of policy compliance, there is no justification for requiring cultural wellbeing and affordable housing, and that is on site and as a commuted sum. And that concludes the assessment. If you want to look at that table again, I can switch back at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, we have no registered speakers for this application, so do councillors have questions of clarification for the officers? Councillor Trendall.
Thank you. Just looking at the list of people who will no longer be getting money or very much money, my eye falls upon public transport. Can you tell me what consideration was given to the Bus Services No. 2 Act that's just gone through Parliament, and why has that been ignored? Because very soon now we'll be running our own buses and we'll probably need some money.
Thanks, Paul. As part of this, it's not proposed to remove the public transport contribution. If you look on the table, it's still proposed at 32,300. Okay. It's detailed in the report. So it's about halfway down. Just.
It's the bottom of page 160 in the report, Paul, if you want to look at that.
Not the public transport contribution, no.
Yes, Leo?
Clarification that it just might be worth explaining for everybody in the room. As MKCC is the applicant, this is us in effect choosing not to ring fence some of our own money to spend on specific things as a council, but otherwise we could still choose to spend the money on those things should the financial position of the council allow. It's a new, I'm kind of asking somebody to explain the nuance of the fact that MKCC is the applicant as well as us reviewing it, if that makes sense in terms of finances.
You want us to take that one?
I'll start off and I'm sure others might chip in. I think it comes back to the conversation that we had on the first item in terms of that element of separation between the council as a landowner developer and the council, yourselves on committee, as the local planning authority making a decision on an application. So when we receive the request for a deed of variation, there's that two-stage process we have to go through. We have to ask, does that obligation, as originally included in the Section 106, still serve a legitimate planning purpose? And you can see some were filtered out because we weren't able to say yes to that. And then the second stage is, do the consultees that we would consult still stand by the sums they request, or do they indicate that there's a different sum? And again, viability feeds into that consideration. So that they're consultees advising us as the local planning authority, providing their technical expert advice to us as a local planning authority, not providing their advice to the council as a landowner developer. Thank you, Chair.
That's sufficient for you, Leo?
Yes, it is. And I could follow up with just saying that I presume, therefore, that the assessment would be exactly the same, whoever the applicant had been, if it was a large private company or whatever.
That's correct, yeah.
Anyone else with any questions of clarification? Has anyone got any other glasses they want to lend Paul so he can read the screen? Okay, no other questions. I will propose recommendation for debate, which is that item 6D, land at the Agora, application 2025/0983, which is that obligations and contributions be varied and removed on the terms as set out in paragraphs 8.1 and 8.2 of the main report, and in the event that the revised memorandum of understanding is not completed within 28 days following the committee resolution, the head of planning be delegated authority to extend the period of completion of the MOU, or in consultation with the chair and vice chairs refuse to further vary any original MOU agreement. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Wakas. Does anyone want to speak in debate on this item? Go ahead, Leo.
I would just say if I was a resident of Wolverton, I would be keen to get on and redevelop this space, and I'm okay with the application such as it is.
Thank you very much, Leo. Does anyone else like to contribute? Keith and then Paul.
Thank you. So did you have a second job reading at the end of radio adverts? You speak at 185 words per minute. I noticed, I suppose I asked a question on page 157, 7.8. I was interested to note that the education team have decided not to ask, but it seems to be that they said in their consultation that because there's capacity, they don't need to have any more money. It seems to me that there's a trigger point when it is at capacity, the next applicant is going to have to pay, but the previous one didn't, but could produce the same number of kids. It does worry me a bit about that. It's a bit like deja vu, as John's commented. MKCC is the applicant in 2 of the 4 we've talked about. The other bit is that the total offered now under Section 106 in this report is approximately 10% of what it was. Seems to be a pattern coming here. So it worries me a bit that we are reducing the obligations of the developer, whoever it will be in the end, given that MKCC is currently the owner. But I do take Leo's point, and I think a lot of social media is just get on and develop something from what's a pile of rubbish. So yeah, it's one of those ones. I don't think there's any reason not to not to support this.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I'm really saying this just so it's noted, and I understand what Leo's saying about the money might still be there. It's just no longer going to be ring-fenced, and we could spend it further down the road. I think what everyone, at least on this side of the room, knows, because we heard the leader say it, given our current state of affairs financially, and to be fair as well, there's lots of councils around the country who would bite their arm off to have our problem rather than the problem they've actually got. But given our current state of affairs and the very large deficit we suffer, if it's not ring-fenced, you won't get it. So we can say that it's not ring-fenced, but we could still spend it. The only way you get anything spent now is if you have a big wall built around it, and that's the reality, and probably will be for a number of years. So we should probably be a little bit more honest with ourselves. But I'm with Keith on this. If it is what it is and we can't do anything else about it, I'll support it. But I'll support it knowing exactly what I'm supporting, not in the hope of some money down the road.
And Rex, you.
Oh, I'm feeling very grumpy. This is thoroughly unsatisfactory, isn't it? You know, I voted against it last time, not necessarily on grounds of 106 or anything like that, but on the fact that the application is an overdevelopment of the site, and it takes away all the existing open spaces within Wolverton and builds blocks of houses on it. And there's a pocket park in there, but all the views of the church, which we certainly have had for the history of Wolverton, are gone. It's an unsatisfactory overdevelopment to the site. So all the flaws in the application are all still there, and it just gets worse. And this is what, if you look at the application for Campbell Park, what's to stop the applicant of the Campbell Park now saying, now I've got permission to come back and sort of say, well, I can't provide you with the £12 million worth of goodies. So it's thoroughly unsatisfactory. However, having said that, if it is what it is and there's nothing we can do about it, I'll still vote against it because I voted against it in the first place, and it's not any better.
Thank you, Rex. Any other contributions from the committee? No. Okay. Well, there's not a lot of enthusiasm for this on the committee, rightly so. Obviously, we don't like the fact that departments are going to get less, departments or services are going to be less funded. Development should be funding to mitigate the impact that it's doing. To be totally honest, much like Rex, did not like the plans when they first came forward. Personally, wouldn't have knocked the Agora down, would have tried to redevelop that rather than knocking it down and starting again. But that's not what we're voting on. We're voting on whether it's acceptable to alter the S106 agreement, and given the extensive viability assessment that's gone ahead, as has been noted by at least 4 of the committee, there's not a lot we can do about that other than approve. So, Alex, can we take a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, please raise your hand if you're in favour of the recommendation. And those against? Abstentions. Thank you, Chair. So that's 6 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention.
So the motion carries. Thank you. Right, and last but not least, we will move on to the appeals decision received over Christmas. Chris, can you update us on this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, not intending to go into any great discussion. 5 outcomes there, as well as a costs decision in favour of the council, which is another one to add to the, a couple of cost decisions in favour of the council, a couple to add to the tally. The one that relates to Bros Crescent was actually an interesting one where they essentially conceded withdrew the appeal, and we were like, well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? So we'll have our costs back, please. It's an interesting one, though, the second in the list, the Bull Hotel in Olney, which I'm sure Keith has a great interest of. I particularly enjoy the closing remark on paragraph 11 about them proposing a lesser alternative of propping the gates up in the back garden. The inspector said it would be entirely pointless. So I did chuckle at that one. That's all, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do the committee members wish to ask any questions, make any comments? Go on, Keith.
I'd first of all like to congratulate the team on 5-0. It's great to see it. And I think it's probably the first time we've actually got that in the way that it's been presented. And yes, Chris, you're absolutely right. I was delighted when I heard the outcome of the appeal and it was dismissed. My phone and email has not rung or had any emails from a certain person, only who's been on my back for about 4 years, and he was absolutely right. The next thing we need to do is ensure that the owners of the building actually comply sooner rather than later with what the inspector said. Otherwise, I think the phone will ring, and I think I will get emails from a certain person. But really well done, team, for 5-0 with no costs.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? Well, I definitely echo Keith's sentiments on a well done on such a healthy win ratio ongoing. I feel like the last few reports have definitely been pretty solid, but I'm not sure we've had a 5-0 for a while, so well done on that. The recommendation is that committee note receipt of the appeal decisions received between December and February. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, one of you. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much, everyone. I close tonight's formal business at 9:10.